Okay, yeah. So just to reiterate, uh, if this .env was on GitHub, then everybody would be able to see my secret. If people could see my secret, they could use the same tools that I'm using to create web tokens from user IDs, and then they could create their own client that did stuff that could easily authenticate to my server. If they don't know my secret, they don't know how to make web tokens that associate, they don't know how to make valid web tokens, right? Because you'll see the token is like a, I don't know, probably like 50 character long string that you can't just guess. It's not something that, that, you know, you just like make all of them possible and like, you know, and just randomize and find one that works. Like you really need to know how to encrypt them. And the only way you can encrypt them is, for my application, is with this secret. Yeah.
So is it like a, but if you give the same ID to that, JWT simple, like create the same token every time?
Yes. Yes.
And can you use a site that requires that token without logging in, like being authenticated?
How would, so the question is, the first question was, does it make the same JWT every time? And actually I said yes, but I'm not 100% sure, so we can look it up. We can look it up with JWT simple and okay, and then algorithms. Yeah, I don't see anything here that says it makes it different every time, because basically it's going to be something that it's like ID plus secret equals token. Token plus secret equals ID, right? And that's just sort of how this JWT simple works. Maybe there's JWT complicated that does more stuff. Okay, and the second question was, can a user log in with the web token without having authenticated? Was that sort of your question?
Yeah, I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah, so certainly.
So you don't, if you're using that token.
Right, but how would you get the token?
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, once you did.
Once you do get the token, yeah. And actually, I'm not going to talk about that now because that's not so much Passport. But if and when you take the Stephen Greider authentication thing, which is in his advanced React and Redux, that token actually gets saved on the client using local storage. And so since that token is saved on the client, once you log in, you don't have to log in again unless you clear everything from your local storage on the client. Okay, so let's actually just look and see how. So now I've got my secret. So let's try one more time to start. Nice. And so let's look back at the code now. So in my app, I've got .env, and that's what brings my secret in. I'm using Express. I'm using body parser because I'm going to want to post my username and password. Using Passport, and I'm using Passport service. And notice that the Passport service is something that I wrote. And then I have this authentication, which is basically just how I'm authenticating people. Oh, I think I started when my computer just like completely bit the dust. I started talking about, so in my Passport, normally you would have like a check user passport or password function. You would, and that would go to your database. But here I'm not dealing with databases. I just have a fake one that gives you a user if the email is joe@schmo.com, and otherwise it gives you null. You would actually, if you were doing it, you would actually check the database, and if the username and password matched, you would give it a user. Otherwise, you would give it null. The user, again, this for you, when you're actually doing this, would be something that comes out of the database. But for this, I'm just making an object. Similar to check if the user ID is in the database. Basically, I only have one user ID in my fake database, and that's user ID 5. So if it's 5, then return the user. If it's not, return null. Okay. So now here we're starting to get into Passport. This is my file, this passport.js, where I am looking at my strategies. So I'm going to make 2 strategies here for Passport. One is the local strategy, and that's the one I'm going to use if I'm actually receiving an email and password. I'm going to want to check to see whether I have that email and password on my local database. The other is my JWT strategy. If I'm getting a web token, I want to be able to check to see whether that web token, using this extract JWT, whether it, an extract JWT is going to use my secret. I want to see whether that web token decodes properly to a user ID in my system. 2 different strategies, depending on what data I receive and what route you go to. Yeah. Yeah, so usually if something is a class, you do this upper camel case. So that's a hint that it's a class. Okay, so we have this, so check password is going to do my fake check user password, but you would do a real check user password against the database of the email and the password. Forget that comment, that has to do with other things. If we got null back, it means the user's not in the database or the password didn't match. That's what it would mean if you had a real check user password function. In our fake check user password, it just means that it wasn't Joe Schmo, right? So in that case, we're going to return done, null, false. Notice that this has 3 parameters. It has email, password, and done. So what is done? What class of things is it? It's a function, and it's a callback is what you usually call something that you pass here. And because this is a local strategy that I'm going to use this check password as the function for the strategy, it just means that do your thing Passport with null meaning there was no error and false meaning we did not find a user. Then here, if that didn't happen, then we found a user. So null means there's no error, and found user means here's your user that we found. Here there was an error. So done is going to just get called with the error. Fine. When would this catch happen? If there's an error running the fake check user password, right? If somehow like it couldn't connect to the database or something, right? That's when this catch would end up. Yeah.
You said that check password is the strategy that you're using.
Check password is the function that I'm associating with my local strategy. Yeah, which might not be 56 on yours because I've like deleted some comments and stuff. Yeah, okay. Right, so when I create my local strategy, I want to give it options and then whatever the function for that strategy is going to be, sort of, yeah. And the options is just, I'm going to use my username field is going to be email. By default, I think it's username. So I'm just telling it, when you get that, when you get the data, I want the thing that you use as the username to be email and not username. When you get the data as an object, the username, give me the value of the email property. That's what I want to use as the username. Okay, so then we're going to make a JWT strategy, and this one is a little bit simpler. So the options, this one is telling it where to find my token, and it's going to find it in the header whose key is authorization. That's where it's going to find the token. And then how to decode it, use the secret from my .env file. So those are my options for my token. And then my function now has this payload, which is the token. And the token contains a couple things. It contains sub, which is my user ID. And it contains user, and now I'm realizing that this was probably a little ambitious for the amount of time that I have, you know, as far as the explanation. So I'm not going to go into so much detail. I'm just going to say I have this function which basically grabs the user ID from the token. This tells it where to find the token. This tells it how to get the user ID from the token. This tells it how to decode the token. In authentication, I tell it how to generate the token. And in the token, I give it a date. IAT is the standard field for that. And I don't remember what it stands for. And then the sub, and this is very specific to JSON Web Token. The sub, or basically the subject of this web token, is my user ID. Issued at time, thank you. Yeah. Okay, and then I have this sign in, and basically all the sign in does is generate the token. So now if I look at my app, and again, I'm sort of glossing over because I can see that going into the detail with the amount of time I have is just not it's not something that is really parsable in this amount of time. So basically, now is where I use my middleware. I make a middleware for my sign-in route that says before you post to sign in, before you check to see whether somebody's signed in, use my local strategy. Check to see whether this user and password are in the database. And I don't need to keep a session because I'm doing this with a API and not with a browser front end. So I'm going to use this middleware, and then if it actually passed the middleware, if it passed the authentication, then I want to use this sign-in route, which basically is just send the token back. So we can look at that. If I go here, so I'm going to go now to localhost 3000, and I'm going to go to sign-in, and I'm going to post. And my body, I'm going to have an email, and I'm going to say nope@nope.com. and a password, which is doesn't matter. Because remember, my fake my fake thing is not checking the password. It's just checking to see whether the email is Joe Schmo, right? So if I send this, it's going to tell me unauthorized. That did not pass my test. But if I change it to joe@schmo.com and I send it, now it actually gives me the token. Now that I have that token, I can now look at my protected route. So let's go back to my app. I have this protected route here. And this I'm using the middleware of require auth, which is basically like you can't get to this route unless you use my JWT strategy to see whether or not I'm authenticated. And the JWT strategy is just checking to see whether I have that token in the authorization header. So let's go to the protected route without that token in the authentication header. So if I look at my headers, I'm going to actually just have no headers. Now let's go to the protected route. I'm unauthorized. But now if I put that header in here as authorization, and I had copied that key. So if I put it here, and now I send, now it gives me the message. Okay, so so I realized that was a lot. I wish I had not gone into such detail in the beginning and done more of a broad overview, but you have all the code, you can play with it. And basically that's the idea. You conceptually, the user logs in, you give them a token. With every subsequent request, you use the token. And because we have this, this JWT middleware on any protected resources, it won't show them unless it passes the JWT passport strategy. Okay, that was an awful lot. Was it useful? Yeah, okay.
When you want to destroy not a session, but the authorization.
If you want to destroy the authorization, at this point, the authorization doesn't live anywhere. I've just talked about the server. The way Stephen Greider is helping me do it with my app is I'm saving the token as local storage on the browser. And local storage is just when you use browser-side JavaScript, you can add stuff to the local storage using standard JavaScript, and you can remove stuff from the local storage using standard JavaScript. So when the user logs out deliberately, you'll just remove it from the local storage. And then when your app tries to make a request, it will look for the token in the local storage, won't find it, and be like, sorry, dude, you can't. Okay, great. Let's stand up and stretch, and at 11:20 we'll reconvene and look at OAuth with Hannah.
Oh.
I might want to what? Oh, thank you. Yes. Okay. Okay. So I'm stopping my screen share. I'll invite, and let me pause the recording. Resume recording. Okay. So Hannah has this pretty fun lyft app. So do you want to just go over the app and why you need why you need passport/authentication?
Sure. So this is the app. The way it works is you decide if you want to have food or if you want to have drinks or both. And then you set the distance, the rating of the place you want to go, and then how much it costs. And then you push this button and it selects the location and calls you a Lyft all in one. So you just get into a Lyft and go somewhere. It's called indecision. And that's it. So it's like, should be pretty simple. We got all the front end working, which is all done in React. So everything you change is changing the state. And what we need to do now is get it so that you actually log into Lyft so that, and we're doing the 3-legged OAuth, which, so like the 2-leg basically means you get to pull data from their account. So you could say like the status of when the Lyft car is coming. But the 3-leg means you can actually call a Lyft on their behalf using their account. So which is what we want to do, but it's more complicated because there's just like a couple more steps.
There's a whole new leg.
Yeah. So what we have it set up now. Okay, so there's like 2 ways of going through this. There's using the Lyft OAuth documentation.
And could you, I know you're going to have to reduce it later when you're looking at it yourself, but yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. So there's the Lyft OAuth 3-legged thing, and that's what we've been doing. And basically it says send, so the first step is you obtain access to the Lyft account, which means it takes you to the page that says log into your Lyft account. The next thing it does is it gives you this like authorization code to which you can use an access token, which basically says, yes, you can make changes on my account and like send data essentially. And so, so then you use the access token. So you like send in your form or whatever saying, here's all the things that, like all the methods that I want to use for Lyft. And then you can like refresh it or I think destroy it. Yeah. That's basically it. Doing the OAuth by itself is just, it's so frustrating because it's like, you're basically working with, and I'll show you real quick. These like really detailed, intricate fetch calls where it's not very clear exactly what you need to send over. So like for this one, for instance, I like went through and tried all these different like methods to just send over my client ID and my like secret or like password essentially. But there's like all the, and like it still doesn't work. So there's this cool nifty Passport Lyft kind of plugin. And what this does, so how we were talking about like the strategies for Passport, this does its own Lyft strategy. So instead of, I think it's like local strategy or something.
Yeah, I was using
like
local strategy and JWT strategy. So you can also have this Lyft strategy.
Yeah. So this is just like made by a random person and there's been like 50 downloads over all time. So it's like, so it's a little bit questionable, but it also comes up if you look for strategies for Lyft. It's not refreshing.
There it is.
Okay, yeah. So it's like, great. Great.
Yeah, 5 downloads. Nice. Okay.
Yeah, so it makes me kind of wonder like how everybody's doing it without doing Passport, which I'm guessing is just through the OAuth, which is a headache. So we basically started using the Passport side of it. It's a little, it was a little hacky, but I turned that part off just like 2 minutes ago. So this is basically what we're sending over via Passport, which just pulls my client ID, which is in my .env file, and then my secret. And then it sends it back or sends it to this callback. So essentially when we click let's see if we go to the login, when we click this button that says login, this is like my attempt with OAuth. So just don't use it. It just sends weird things. So this one, if you click it, it does bring you to the Lyft page. and then you accept. So that is doing this first piece here. And then you click accept. And we're getting like an issue with serialize into session. So what I was just looking up 2 seconds ago, actually in this documentation before I moved it all around, is this passport serialize user. So this is like something that's required, but I'm still trying to figure out where I put it in my documentation.
Okay, cool.
And that's where I'm at.
So I want to point out just a couple things. First of all, like how awesome is the app, right? And then second of all, so you saw the difference between you saw the difference between what you have to do if you use Passport, which is this, versus what you have to do if you use OAuth, which is.
And this is only half of it. Like there's still one more function that I need to write out, which is
so
actually
this
two
is,
more.
Yeah. So this is why everybody hates OAuth. And this is why that passport thing is actually pretty awesome, right? So even though only 50 people have downloaded it, we need to thank that lovely lady or gentleman who wrote that. Lady, great, even better. So the right. So let's try and get it working using Passport, shall we? Let's do it.
Yeah.
So can you?
I'm going to close this file because we're not going to be using it.
Okay, great. And then I'm going to actually request request what?
Oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and like get be able to control you. Okay, so Hannah Bowers. Let's see more.
I can hand it over to you.
Yeah, can you do that? Because I'm not seeing. I'm only. All right. Click to start remote control of the shared screen. Okay, so now can I? All right. Okay. Oh man. Okay. How do I get back to the Okay.
Does
right.
it not work when you do the 3 fingers?
3 fingers? No, because on mine I have 3 fingers doing something different. Let me just very briefly okay. Let's see. I'm gonna. You
can also do control.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Okay, so let's take a closer look. This is so funny. Okay,
that's in my server.
Yeah. So can you make this bigger? Awesome. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at what this actually says.
We can pull that down.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, in theory, this is like so great, but
you can just get rid of that tab actually, because I was just downloading it.
I clear though.
Yeah.
How about the X?
Cool.
I can user interface. Okay. So let's see if we can find what's actually going on here. Okay. Okay, so we're getting a warning probably from a linter. And then, okay, error, failed to serialize user into session. So let's talk about debugging strategy, because that is my main goal for you all is to improve debugging. So what would you do here? So this is the stack trace here. You want to look at the stack trace to see what? Which line is from our code? Exactly. So we want to see this one's node modules, this one's node modules, this one's node modules, this one's no node modules. Okay, so now here we have lyft passport JS line 21. So yeah, line 21. Okay, so basically, when it's calling the callback is the problem. So I like that as a general debugging strategy. Here, it's not going to help us because really the problem is sort of within Passport.
Yeah.
What other ideas do people have?
Well, I googled the error message, which gave me a pretty good
Cool.
solution.
Googling the error message. All right. So show me what you found.
Well, basically, I just I've worked with Passport before, so I had a very small understanding that like serialized user is just a piece that you need to do.
Okay.
So when I went into the documentation, I just looked for serialized.
Ah.
I think I also might have. Yeah. So this is also failed to suit, just like the direct.
Right.
message.
Hi, got a problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which gives you the same thing.
Okay. And where do we put that?
That part, I'm not entirely sure. So I want to say maybe somewhere in here, but it also would make sense to put it like somewhere in here.
Yeah, I'm thinking that it is a configuration of Passport just the way Passport use is. That's my guess based on my very limited Passport. But
Yeah,
I want
it's a Passport method.
Right, exactly. So, and I'm just gonna, for some reason it doesn't, when I try and do the general, can you increase the font on this? Thank you. Okay, thanks. Okay, so.
Yeah, so they have it kind of set up slightly different where they have their Passport local strategy in their index file.
Okay.
But it should.
Okay, so, and then we also have to put deserialized users. So we don't really know what this means, but let's see. And then somebody's saying, I don't want to store it in session because I'm using JWT, which is interesting. We're not using JWT. It would be an easy thing to test. Interesting. If you decide not to use sessions, you could set the session to false, right? And I have a feeling that might be more what we want to do here.
Okay, yeah.
But let's check. So I want to go back to your code, and
yeah.
So can we? I don't know whether this is the place we would do it, but I suspect it is.
Interesting.
Let's just try this and see what happens.
Okay.
I'm, as you guys probably have gathered, I am no Passport expert. So a lot of this is just sort of like instinct.
So we might even just be able to refresh.
Let's see.
So yeah, we have to go through this process every time that we're?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. Still got failed to serialize user into session. So that did not fix the problem. Okay. So let's look again here. But it really is talking about session. So I'm now curious. We basically do not. So here's my like sort of high level analysis of this. I don't think we want to use a session. What were you saying?
Just looking at the error.
Yeah.
Go back to Stack Overflow. There's a line that's Passport.serialized user, and that's what I was thinking. Like there may be something going on.
Yeah, but it seems like that might fix it. It does seem like that might fix it, but I don't know that is necessarily, like, we might be able to do that. It might fix it, but basically right now what it's trying to do is it's trying to put the user into a session, right? And we could fix it by just serializing the user and having it put it into the session, and that would be okay. But the fact is, we don't even really want a session here for the reason that I was talking about before, which is when you're using a React client, the session is not even relevant, right? So the quick and dirty way to fix it would probably be to put in those serialized user functions, serialize. And I don't even think we'd need the deserialize because I don't think we're ever using the session, but maybe we do. But I don't think it's the right thing to do here. I think the right thing to do here is to make sure we're not using a session. And in general, when I was doing the JWT stuff, I just did session equals false because that's what Steven told me to do, but because I did not need a session. And I did that in the options. So I was hoping that, let's see, I was hoping that the lovely lady who wrote the Lyft session or the Lyft passport strategy would just take whatever I put here for session and would pass that along to passport, but it looks as though she didn't. So I actually want to start looking into the source code for Lyft passport.
I have that pulled up.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So
there's also like notes on what this all is up here.
Wow. I love this person. How come
Yeah.
only 50 people have downloaded this? Okay. Okay, so, all right. So basically, so here's the strategy, and it's going to take whatever options you give it, and then it's going to have this verify. It's that verify is going to be the function that it's going to use for the middleware. It's going to inherit this OAuth 2 strategy. It's going to retrieve the profiles. This is all the OAuth stuff that it's sort of doing for us, is, and then it's just going to export the strategy. Okay. And the OAuth 2 strategy, so these options are just getting passed around, which is why I'm curious that the session false is not working. But, because it's just adding to the options, it's just adding to them, and then it is going, and then it throws the options at the OAuth 2 strategy, and it sets some properties for whatever object is that we make for this. So I'm now curious about the passport OAuth 2 strategy.
These are like all the things that I've been looking at.
That's awesome. So you and I have the same general debugging.
This one's actually pulled up right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Jared Hansen. Okay. So, look at this. That person is using session false. So how come you get to use session false, Jared? And when we try and use session false,
does the comma follow like the?
This should be just a plain JavaScript object, and it shouldn't care whether we have a trailing comma or not. Okay. So
maybe try it without, just because I feel like OAuth is so.
Yeah, I mean, we had it without before.
No, I erased it.
Oh, you
tried.
Okay.
But yeah, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah, that's not part of the OAuth. So Well, when session support is not necessary, it can safely be we're trying. Okay, so I want to see something.
Does it?
Yeah, so the session, oh, where is it being made? It's within Passport.
So does it matter? Does this line play a part?
Oh, interesting. I don't think so.
Can we take it out?
That's a great idea. So let's try again. Let's save that and
Yeah. Okay.
okay. So what I want to do now, what time is it, by the way? Okay, great. We got time. So I want to do looking at the source code debugging, right? This is something that we've done before. So let's go into node modules.
Do you want me to?
It looks like I'm okay for now, but at some point I might. Okay, so this one was called lyft passport. Passport lyft. Yeah.
Maybe if you didn't require express session.
So that would it's so tell me why you think that would make a difference.
Just because it wants to. It's like you put session equals false.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to not use it, so then it's, I don't know, it seems like it wants to use it for some reason.
Aren't they separate though? So like you can have a session, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's getting sent into Passport.
Yeah, that would be my argument. And plus, just requiring something, I could require anything I want up here, but if you don't attach it to Passport, then it's like Passport doesn't even know that there is a session.
Yeah, so we have session like separate. So
my guess is that wouldn't make a difference. If we were desperate, maybe we would try it. I'm not that desperate yet. Okay. Okay, so Passport lyft. We were in lib and strategy. Okay, so let's make sure that we are doing what we think we're doing. So let's just console log. Well, yeah, I definitely want to see the options too, but I first just want to make sure we're in here. Okay, so can you go back and trigger this again?
So we should have already gotten something.
Okay, so let's go back.
Before.
I don't see it, but it might have been.
I can't get anything to show on the console.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So let's. Cool. Let's. So I want to see. We are definitely loading this, but. Or I think we are. Loading. And let's just, because there's a lot of weeds for us to. Oh. Okay. Again, please. Okay, so scroll up. Let's see whether it even loaded it. Can we actually like do a hard control
Totally.
C and
Do you want me to?
okay, there that so any changes that we were making weren't getting so now okay, so cool. So now we know yeah, so let's see.
So it should work though, because we have like node them on, but are you
Yeah.
saying we have to like, oh well, we would have to rebuild with we have to do it. Wouldn't we have to do like? No, I guess not.
Yeah, not for the client. I think NodeMon, you know, like it doesn't assume it must not assume that the yeah, so that actually happened that happened just on the start. That did not
which makes sense because it's part of the node modules. So
right. So yeah, so it looks like it doesn't reload the node modules. NodeMon doesn't. Okay. Okay, so let's all right.
So now we can start making changes and we just have to hard reset.
Yeah, okay. So, but the fact is, oops, yeah, exactly. Okay, but it called this already, and right, so now let's see what the options are. So, and it only does that once at the beginning, right? It only at once at the beginning, like actually makes our new strategy. Okay, so yeah, do a hard restart.
I also have a really fun error that happened earlier that I think you'll get a kick out of.
I love fun errors. Okay. Okay, so it's definitely getting our session false. Okay, so let's look back and see. So it's got a client ID, a client secret, a callback, a state, and a session false. So let's go back. Thank you. It seems to have like completely. Okay, yeah, it just doesn't like me anymore.
So I'm gonna pull this out.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. All right, so now, and so all it should be doing is adding stuff to the options. So let's see. Okay. No. Okay.
I think I'm going to make a really detailed tutorial.
That would be awesome, and publish it as a blog post.
Yeah. I'll try to figure out how all this works.
Okay. So, yeah.
In our sessions table, I don't have to initialize.
But we're not using sessions here. Well, we so we're trying to make sure that it doesn't use a session. That's our whole goal here, is to make it so that for this strategy it's not using the session. Yeah.
But there's not, I can't read that far away, but is there anything on save and initialize?
Well, but save and initialize is if you have a session, and we don't even want to have a session. Yeah. I want to see after this whether options, you know, like we didn't see whether after this line, I mean, it should, but I don't know what's going on. So well, now you don't even want to talk to me, huh?
What are you using session elsewhere for?
No, there is no database.
Okay.
before, where did we put session in? We were gonna do a login thing, which we decided against. Like, it's gonna be like slightly more robust, but we're just like, let's just
Thanks,
skip
James.
that for now. We could take it out of the index, but I don't think it's gonna make a difference for what we're doing.
Okay, and then, so then this OAuth 2 strategy we're calling it, if we go back, so we're calling the OAuth 2 strategy with this session false. And here, this OAuth 2 strategy tells us that you can, give it session false. You give it a username field, a password field, and a pass request to callback.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see what's going on here. So here, it doesn't have a username or a password field. We're looking at a client ID and a client secret instead, and a callback URL. So maybe it actually just works differently. If let's actually look and see, because this one. Oh no, this is local strategy.
Mm-hmm.
I want
What strategy?
what? Yeah, wait. Where was the OAuth? Where you mentioned that you had the OAuth documentation up?
Yeah,
or the
that's
OAuth
down
strategy.
Here. There's also this, which is like a tutorial, but it uses something that I don't know.
Okay.
So we don't have to do
okay.
it that way.
Okay. No. But wait, hold on. So let me do another search here again.
Sure.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay. So passport. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that we were just looking at.
I don't think it is though, because that one was looking at local strategy, and this one. So can you increase the font size on this so people can see it? Thank you. Okay, and so yeah, I'm wondering somehow.
So close to what we're doing.
Yeah, I know, but I'm wondering if somehow the OAuth strategy.
Y'all, there's a passport OAuth to JWT Bearer module that I sent you in Slack.
Okay.
I don't know if you looked at that or
Okay, but I don't know that we're dealing with JWT at this point.
Yeah, we haven't started that.
I think, okay, so, but somehow I think somehow the OAuth 2 strategy now is ignoring our session false. So now I'm going to look at the OAuth 2 strategy. So passport, OAuth 2, look in here at lib and strategy.js. And this one,
Session state store.
Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna, apparently not with me. Can you comment that line, please? Okay, and then
like dual coding.
Yeah, I know exactly. This is pair programming at its finest.
Session key.
Why do you insist on using sessions? Yeah, so can we comment out line 97 as well? And let's just go ahead and
key somewhere now.
this underscore, yeah, so good question. Let's see if
So
oh yeah, look at this.
So state. We could probably just get rid of this instead of this.
So it looks like you're using state. Do you know why? Or no, are you using store or using state? Somehow I saw that somewhere. Yeah, state. So do you know why you're using this? Is it just what they told you to do?
Yeah, this is like what the Lyft authentication thing here says that you need. And it's in the like very initial.
Okay. So we have to use state.
Yeah, I tried not to.
Okay. So let's go back to back here, but I feel like maybe we're getting somewhere now, right? So option store is not, but so I actually want, I have a
question.
Yeah.
So like I'm a little confused because Passport OAuth 2 clearly works. It's like used in tons of different places.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel really like skeptical about modifying the source code for this.
So the reason I'm doing this is not necessarily for permanent, this is how the code is going to be purposes, but just for like curiosity, debugging, seeing if this is what's going on.
Okay,
right?
So like maybe find the root and then see if there's a place above it.
Yeah, and I mean, so one thing that I could do is we could put this back. I can't because for some reason it doesn't listen to me. And then we could go back here and can you comment out the state? Okay. So let's see what happens there. Can you do the hard restart?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think Lyft wants the state, and it's possible that you actually just can't use Lyft without without a session. It's possible you just can't use this Lyft passport without a session.
You have this direct to the login page first.
Yeah, good idea.
There you go.
Yeah, so very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so
what if we set state to false?
I think it's the same thing because if we look here, it's just checking to see whether state is truthy. And
okay.
Yeah, so it was undefined or false. So now I'm thinking we can't use Lyft. Oh, wait, what happened? I'm thinking you can't use the Lyft passport without a session. So that brings us all the way back to, that's okay. That brings us all the way back to that serialized thing.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back and let's just try the serialized thing.
Okay, and so I'm going to get rid of this line.
Yeah.
I'll just comment it out now because I'm going to have to take notes on this one. So can I undo everything we did in here?
Absolutely.
Actually, I'm just going to close this for now. Otherwise it's going to pull me every time it resets.
Oh, okay.
Okay, see. And undo everything in here.
Sure.
Okay. And so potentially use this. But
yeah, I mean, you probably have to. It looks like the way Lyft Passport is set up is it uses sessions. Okay. And if you don't use sessions, then you can't use Lyft Passport.
So would I do app.use and then passport.serialize here?
No, I would do it in your Lyft Passport. Okay. And at the bottom, after you do passport.use, do passport.serialize or whatever okay. That was. And then do the deserialize as well.
Just one right after the other?
Yeah. So that's just basically setting up Passport. That's configuring Passport.
Where does this go to? Okay, cool. Okay.
So now let's try again. And so there are those, if this works, there are those of you who would say, Bonnie, you just wasted half an hour, like going through source code. No, Alex would never say that. But I feel like I understand better what's going on, rather than, I really liked when Cam, were you here when she talked about just sending your resume a lot of places and hoping that it gets accepted? She talked about spray and pray, right? To me, that would, if we just put that in, that would be the spray and pray form of debugging, right? And now we're getting a different error.
Mm-hmm.
So that's awesome. But what time is it?
Yeah, it's noon.
Noon. Okay. So
This is a good jumping point for me, though.
Okay,
at
awesome.
least. Yeah.
Okay, good. So thank you so much for sharing your project. In general, when you use these strategies specific to applications rather than using the OAuth 2, in general, it should simplify things. But in this case, it didn't, because you're using OAuth, and so you deserve whatever you get, right? Like, it's basically you're cursed no matter what. So
okay, so for the passport lyft module, it basically needs this in here as well.
Yes, that's what it looks like.
So this looks, so it looks like I can make a pull request on their project.
Yeah, totally. But you also need to, like, the fact that you're getting that user error, means that there's something else that it needs also.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Maybe I'll just maybe I'll just make my own. I don't know. Okay, cool.